Hello, welcome to Revenue Search, one of the best podcasts.
Most professional.
Definitely the most professional podcast in Bittensor. My name is Mark Creaser, and my co-host, as always, DSV's Siam Kid. What are we? I mean, we're Bittensor's only specialist hedge fund. I know, first, no longer the only, but we're the first.
Yeah.
It's a growing market, which we're excited about. But we do have Revenue Search. And Revenue Search today is a little bit different to normal. What have we got? What's going on? What is this new thing that you've got where you hide people in some sort of digital green room, but then you forget the curtains are open.
And they're there, yeah.
And then they're there.
No, I thought we'd hijack something. So Shaq is normally really, or not normally, he is very good at conveying what's happening, what's likely to happen, yada, yada, yada. And he normally holds an AMA, a live AMA on a Friday. And they're very good. And he was going to do one a few days ago, or last Friday. And I thought, wait a minute, can we hijack that? How about we move it to Monday and we do a big revenue search and just do a big AMA, because there are a lot of questions. I've got a lot of questions, and I think we've all seen that there's a bit of confusion, and the best thing with confusion is just to hit the confusion head on and distill it, clarify it, make everything hunky-dory. So I thought, and that's why we're here.
That's exactly what we're here for.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Let him in.
There we go.
Hello.
We've got my on the side.
Yeah. Oh my God. I hate you.
How's it going? Nice to see you guys again.
Always a pleasure. Welcome in from our green room, the digital green room, Siam's digital green room. Anybody else in there?
No. But I am very excited for you to fly all the way over to the UK from Canada in November.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I've booked my tickets this morning, actually.
Yes, it's going to be good. So yeah, we've got a great lineup. We got Ridges, Hippias, Video, Zeus, and Resi coming. So it's going to be a great day. Anyway, let's get back to Shaq. Yes, Mark.
And me, I'll be there.
Oh yeah. I know you're part of the furniture. So yeah. Right, and Shaq, you have some slides. Can we please see them? And I think that'll address a lot of the questions, and then we can get into the quick fire Q&A.
For sure. Yeah. Let me just share my screen. For presentation, I'll try not to
be collecting questions all day. So I've got some. So
I'll try not to ramble on too long.
Right.
Can you guys see my screen with the slides?
Beautiful.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I just thought I'd kind of go over a little bit of a presentation, kind of explaining like where we are, especially with the product, and like our plan to get to market. So yeah, so we have a couple things coming out today. I'm going to explain like what the release schedule looks like for the next couple of weeks. I'm going to give like an actual finalized product release date now and what that product's going to look like. But before I do that, I thought I'd just kind of go over the state of the market for coding agents and how kind of give some color to like why we're doing things the way we are right now. So as it stands right now, coding agents is an extremely competitive space. You have like OpenAI getting involved, Anthropic getting involved. There's an insane amount of companies, I don't even know them all at this point, that are working on the same product. And the reason for this is pretty simple. Software engineers have like immense product market fit, probably the strongest product market fit with AI right now, what people are willing to pay for. And a lot of these companies, like all their engineers are their own users, like their staff are all engineers. And so it seems like a natural thing to go into, especially for big labs and stuff. Like a lot of their training data, their best training data is code. And so especially as we're seeing models kind of like plateau in performance, we is the easiest thing for them to pivot to. On top of that, like in addition to being extremely competitive, it's not that it's competitive, you get the customers and they're willing to stay. The customers, especially outside of enterprise, are extremely unsticky, and they're kind of like switching a lot between the best product. So, I mean, you kind of see it between like right now, Cursor and Cloud Code, they go back and forth a lot. There was a week where everyone started using Codex, and like it's just very back and forth. And it's not even cheap back and forth. It's like very, very expensive back and forth, where all these companies have like a massive burn in payroll and inference. And so these companies have like immensely expensive engineers. Engineers cost a lot of money, and they have massive teams now where they're all getting paid regardless of whether the product gets better. So if you have like 50 engineers, 100 engineers working to make your agents better, you're still paying their like $500,000, $1 million salaries, whether or not you're topping like the product. And so you kind of have the situation where you have the regular, I guess, corporate cycle time of hiring someone, onboarding someone, and if they're not making the big difference, someone has to decide that and eventually fire them. In the system where it's like basically all that matters is iteration speed, who's making the product better faster. And so basically the way we see it, and the reason why we're on Bittensor in the first place, is I think to win in this space, you need a company that reliably gets better faster than everyone else. And that's kind of why we're on Bittensor, and that's why like I think that we will kind of succeed. If you think about Rigid, the platform right now, you have the situation where everyone submits their agents to the platform, the validators evaluate it, and at any given time, only the best agent is getting paid. And if you look at it, like if you look at the teams that are actually building these agents now, it's effectively composed of like a ton of startups that are focused on just making the agents better. But just because you're a startup making the agent better doesn't mean you actually get paid. The startups that are succeeding on Ridges are the ones that are making agents better because they're the only ones that are getting paid. And so effectively, instead of all this money that we're giving out, same as everyone else, being distributed as payroll to a ton of engineers, it's actually only being paid to the engineers that are making progress. And so I think that like this is the core point. What we've built is like effectively an engine that pays you only for making the product better, which is allowing us to get better way faster than everyone else. When we were only doing SWEBench, the average, I guess, like competitor with their models and with their harnesses was improving 0.5% to 1% per week on the entire benchmark. And we were doing consistently 5% with like no sign of slowing down. And that's on all 500 questions, not just our subset that we were using. So kind of the next iteration, and I guess the biggest critique that we have with Ridges right now as we get into the product is just because you're doing well in a benchmark, does that mean that you'll do better as a product? And it's true that performance on a benchmark is not necessarily indicative of real world progress. There's a couple reasons for this. Benchmarks themselves are subsets of what a product looks like. So for example, SWEBench measures your ability to fix problems. And so what that means is that it gives you your agent like some code. It says, okay, this is broken, figure out what is broken and why and fix it. And the agent does that. But again, there's a lot of other things that users and engineers would ask an agent to do. For example, like writing a feature from scratch. Polyglot is a bit closer to that. It gives you, for example, like a blank template, and it gives you like a big set of instructions for what code a user wants written. But again, for example, Polyglot just gives you the code it wants written and like a little template for what to build off of. It doesn't give you like this whole code base to build it off of, which often, for example, a user would ask, okay, this is my code. This is what I want built. Look around the code base and figure out how to integrate this new feature. And so the good thing is that like the core mechanism is there. What Ridges is basically built is a factory that builds these agents and improves them faster than anyone else, which I think is the key point that determines who wins. And now the question as we kind of deliver the product is, how do you tune what determines the best agent to be a lot more in line with what users kind of want to see and pay for? And you can see this, for example, where we went from just SWEBench to Polyglot and SWEBench. So our problem set now is 25 of the hardest SWEBench questions and 25 Polyglot questions, which agents were not prepared for. Immediately, their performance dropped from 88% to about 17-18%. And that was on September 24th. Today's October 6th, and we're already back at 41% on this new problem set that's like completely different from what they've seen. So it kind of just shows like how fast everyone adapts and makes their agents better. But the question is now, like, how do you basically take this incentive mechanism and tie it to the product? How do you basically get miners paid only if they're making a product that users want to pay more for? And this is what we're releasing as our product. So our first step was mixing benchmarks. We have like SWEBench, we have Polyglot, we're going to add SWEBench Pro. We can keep adding more benchmarks, but it's still a limited subset of what it means to be a software engineer. Like I said, there's also the problem of the big labs training on the benchmarks. And the reason why they do this is because they basically want to show that their model is the smartest. And the easiest way to do that is to show how it does on the SWE benchmarks with nothing but just the model. The easiest way to do that is to train your model on the benchmarks. And then all of a sudden, voila, since your model was basically trained on it, you top those benchmarks. But now with agents using those benchmarks, they kind of overperform on the benchmarks because the model underwriter has seen it before. So there's kind of structural problems of benchmarks can only take you so far. And so what we're doing is we're making the product the incentive mechanism. And so the incentive mechanism basically becomes the product. I don't know if that makes sense so far, if you guys have any questions.
Well, I was with you all the way up to that last sentence, making the product the incentive mechanism and the incentive the product.
Okay, so
That's the next slide. Basically, like the current structure is this: the miners submit their agents to us. We take them, we screen them, we pass them to the validators, and that determines the winner. So the benchmarks choose the king. We're now modifying it to be the revenue chooses the king. And the way we're doing it right now, we're gonna update it is that it's the same flow. We pass them in, the validators run it all the benchmark questions. But before you're basically chosen to get the emission, we also pass you into the product. So let's say we have 10,000 users. We'll pick 100 users at random. We'll switch out the agent that is running under the hood to be your new agent that is apparently top of benchmarks. And you'll only get emission if those users basically prefer your agent. So we have a bunch of signals that we're using to determine whether they prefer your agent, but roughly it comes down to, do the users accept the agent's answers more, and do they have to correct the agent less? And like if we do it on a long enough time scale, does it lead to the user kind of using the product more? And so you basically take it where to gain emission, you not only need to make it better on all the benchmarks, but you also need to make it so that the users are more tied into the product. This kind of maps how a regular company does it, where engineers have ideas on how to make the agent better. They'll roll it out to a subset of users. I mean, we did this at Twitter. They do this at OpenAI, and then you kind of like have your own. The engineer chooses the metrics. With an incentive mechanism that's hard coded, you can't really do that. I can tell the miners, like, please make the agent better, but what does that mean? Like, how do you measure it? And they don't care. They're just going to do whatever kind of gets them paid, right? And so this basically, by tying in the user engagement, like in the actual code to who gets paid, ties directly who makes a better product or who makes a better agent to who gets paid. But yeah, so that's basically our idea for how to basically create the product. And it also answers like a big question of like, what happens if Redis gets acquired? It's a silly question, I think, because if we were to get acquired, what exactly are you acquiring? You have like the agents at this point in time, but they're improving day by day. So really, like by next week, the acquisition is stale. But also like now, especially with the product being tied directly to the subnet, it doesn't matter if you kind of acquire the company on top, because the actual product is the subnet itself, if that makes sense. Of course, there is like the big question of what if people game this? Like the miners are going to register a ton of people, and like as long as it's profitable for them to have tons of users and basically skew their user results, they will probably do it. And so we have two things here. The first is that we're going to make it very hard for the user to determine the agent under the hood. So we'll look at the difference between the new agent and the top agent, and we'll try not to like show that to the user of like kind of what it's doing differently. And the second is that we basically need to get to a breakpoint where the amount that we're getting in profit and revenue is more than the amount that we're giving out to miners in emission. And so for us, it's less about, I guess, offsetting emission with revenue for the alpha price alone, and more so making it unprofitable to try to gain the signal for who determines top agent. And so now we have our release date. We're coming out October 30th, 2025 with the first version of our product. It's going to be a cursor and VS Code extension similar to Cloud Code. And basically like the initial design is going to be similar to the kind of problems that agents are seeing right now, because we know that they can do them well. So the user are going to describe a problem and the agents are going to solve it. And we're going to start by basically, for both problem types, creating a signal that determines the top agent, so to speak, directly integrated into the product. We'll have two of these signals. The first one is debug. So similar to SWEBench, the agents kind of describe a problem and then the agent tries to solve that problem. And we'll use kind of like how often the user accepts that as a signal for whether the agent was able to solve that category of problem. And the second one is more complex create requests, where the user has a code base and wants code written from scratch. So kind of similar to Polyglot, but a little bit more mapping what the real world kind of looks like. So I guess one last slide before the slides are done. We have like a slew of releases coming up. We had a problem where basically we added like a ton of features very fast, and now the code for the Redis platform has gotten very complex. And so basically when things break and when they get unstable, it takes a bit of time for us to fix it. So we've rewritten the entire thing end to end from scratch, in a much simpler format, kind of with everything that we've learned, and that's coming out the end of this week. It's actually not the first time this has happened. In July, actually, before novelty search, same thing happened. We added a bunch of features, got very slow. We had to do a rewrite, and that's kind of what set the stage for our next set of like crazy features coming out. We have a few like actual architectural differences with this. We have a dual agent sandbox. which basically means that right now, if you look at the architecture, we created this custom sandbox where you put the agent, you put the code, and the agent runs around in the sandbox. Now we're modifying this to work on a user's computer as a product. And the way we're doing this is that we have like two kind of sandboxes running on the user's product. One sandbox with the user's code where it can edit it safely, and one sandbox just for the agent. And I'll explain more about that on Discord and Twitter, kind of like the technical details of what that unlocks. But basically, this lets us, once this is done, open it right away for even users within Bittensor to beta test the product, which will be very helpful as we kind of get closer to release date. We have basically like agents use tools, and we're gonna standardize how they use that tool. And again, like I'll explain a bit more on that on Twitter and Discord because the presentation is getting a bit long. One major request that we have from miners is that our agents are actually getting these results without internet access. And the reason for that is because we're afraid of giving them internet access because it makes it easy to kind of look up the solution to problems, especially with benchmarks. But now as we go into product, you kind of want the users to have internet access, especially if it's like custom releases and it's harder to kind of gain internet access for that purpose. And so we're going to basically create a limited version of the internet that agents have access to, but with data filtered out that appears on benchmark sets, which should, I think, greatly improve agent performance on top of what they are right now. And it's like almost like a whole new category of what agents can do to solve problems, the things that they can work with. And lastly, we want to get this out before the product is we want to get USD payouts on dashboard, which we paused for now just for compliance reasons. But I think this is going to be a major unlock because as we release the product, we want every time a user logs on to see a big banner that says, make 40, 50 grand a day competing to make this product better that you're using. And the easiest way to do that and attract talent, in my view, is to basically get the dashboard where people can submit agents and get paid directly into dollars. Especially now where we're seeing like entire companies being formed around ridges and competing on the platform. We want to make it so they don't have to worry about the overhead of off-ramping the crypto to operate their company. We kind of want to do that for them. And I think that'll be like a major unlock in terms of agent quality. But yeah, those are the slides.
Good slides.
I know I droned on quite a bit, so happy to hear the questions now.
You want to kick off, Simon? Do you want me to kick off?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
You have a bunch of Telegram questions that you can.
Well, I mean, I've got some questions I was going to just throw in on the back of the announcement, I think, because we've got some questions. I collected some on Telegram, you collected some on X, and then we can do live questions as well, can't we? Because this is fancy software, Simon, and you know what you're doing. That's a lie, but
supposedly.
Okay, so the two things that I took away from that, first thing was this shift from using the benchmarks, which can be easily gamed, to using real life clients that are using the system.
Mhm.
I like that. That's really smart. I don't think we've quite articulated it as cleanly as we could do. The incentive is the product is the incentive. I think we did a better job of that.
For sure.
But
I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, it's like basically like you kind of want to move away from benchmarks, which are very limited and hard to kind of like force miners to build better agents to like if you drive more revenue to the product, you built a better agent, and therefore you deserve the emission.
Yeah, so I like that. And then the other interesting thing there was that you can't give the agent access to the internet while they're taking the test because otherwise they'll cheat. I think that's so cute. They must be like characters for internet access, like children with no calculators.
No
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that. And then October the 30th, that's the date for the product launch.
Yeah.
That's rigid V1. Okay. So what does that mean? What's actually going to happen on October the 30th? There's going to be a website where people can sign up. You said that people move around very, very readily in this market. How are you going to get the message out that you've gone live and they can test you out? Is there going to be an offer to test it? What's the price point going to be? What's going to happen?
Yeah. There's actually an extra slide that I forgot that I accidentally deleted, but kind of going over all this. But
I mean,
basically,
super helpful, wouldn't it?
it would have been useful. Yeah, let me see if I can pull it up. Basically, yeah. So October 30th, we have a website coming live, separate from the Bridges.ai website, which is going to be focused on the competition element, and then we'll have like a Bridges.app website. We might just combine them and keep the homepage displaying the product, because we want the people that are using the product to see the competition very well and kind of convert them as competitors as well. But it's going to be basically an extension that's released that is going to be a cursor extension. Cursor/VS Code. And the reason why we're releasing it like this is because Cursor and VS Code have massive, I guess, users already that are already using the IDE. So instead of building this whole like development environment from scratch, we're gonna kind of release it as an extension that you can pay for and just pop into that user base. If you've already downloaded the Cursor app, if you already downloaded the VS Code app and you're using it to code, just add the Ridges extension. Just click add basically, and it gets integrated into your workflow directly. We're going to start it by pricing at around $12 a month. But we also want to create a Ridges benchmark and so we're going to have basically two pricing tiers. One at $12 a month, one at $8 a month. If you're going to use the $8 a month one, we can also use your data to create a benchmark that's shown publicly to everyone. So you kind of get a discount for giving that kind of access. The reason why we're pricing it so cheap is because we want to get as much user signal as possible. To get to the point where it's impossible to game the incentive mechanism by getting the critical mass of users. And we want more and more users to select from as data to feedback into the incentive mechanism. So our math for this comes roughly like this. To solve 500 questions, it would cost us around $1.26, the 500 SWEBench questions. And those are pretty complicated questions. To solve those same 500 questions with the same amount of tokens on Claude's Opus 4.1 model, it would cost around $94. And so what we want to do is we want to take that and say that, okay, let's say you can give benefit of the doubt to Opus. It's a smarter model that use half as much of the AI calls. So let's call it like, let's say $45. Even then, it's still 37 times cheaper to use Ridges. And so that means that we want to take their plan, which is around $200 a month, and divide it by 37 to come up with a like high-end estimate of $5 to $6 a month for 2,000 user requests for the month per user. Does that make sense? I'm kind of like going all over the place here.
Yeah, that made some sense. So there's some rationale behind the pricing.
Yeah, so roughly $12. We think that we can keep it at around $5 to $6 on the higher end for what it costs us to serve it, which gives us around a 50% margin to start with.
Yeah.
Why bother with $8 and the $12? Share your data, not share your data. Like,
Yeah.
for V1, like this is still beta, really. Why don't you just make all users, I know, $12 and all the data is shared with you? I think
We might consolidate it. Yeah. Well, yeah, so it's unclear. We haven't firmed this up yet, so we might change that. The logic there is that like you're gonna share your data with us regardless, but for some of it we're gonna make it public. So you kind of want people to opt into that, and the easiest way seems to be to give them a discount. Where like we're gonna, in addition to SWEBench and Polyglot, we also want to use that data to create benchmarks that we can list on the site and run the agents through before we send them out for users. And so kind of like give them like a bit of a discount, get some more users on that, just to like kind of incentivize them to opt in.
I think $1 would do it. I'd do $12 and $11.
Really?
Yeah, like psychology is a funny thing, but
Yeah.
in 12.
Okay, that's reasonable. I should find that slide. It's a pretty important slide that got cut.
okay. So how many? So it's Cursor, isn't it, that you're launching as an app on?
Yes, yeah.
How many users are on Cursor that could on October the 30th go on AdWidget?
So they don't give public numbers, but roughly they're at over $1 billion of revenue at $20 a month, so about 500,000 users. And so we only need a small subset of those to basically offset minor emissions fully, which are around $2 million a month. And so if we get roughly 2.5% of the Cursor users to opt in and pay for it, that fully offsets any emission.
And is there a way to promote it on Cursor? I'm not familiar with the platform.
No, so we'd have to do it basically by organic kind of like demand, primarily on Twitter. And I think we'll have like a real viral moment when the product is good enough, especially because when the user signs on, they'll see they can get paid like a boatload of cash to kind of like compete and make the product better.
Okay.
Yeah, you're going to do well with your curiosity customers. So
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you are at that price point, aren't you? Because it's just add it on, even if I never use it.
Exactly. Yeah.
and we have asked this before, but what will you do with the real world revenue that you're about to generate? Is it
So
buyback or growth?
yeah, so we basically have two things. Our cost basically to run the product is pretty low. I mean, we just have like our team payroll, and the platform is where the actual most of the R&D is developed. So we are actually considering, like, to some extent, I'm averse to buybacks long term because you want to create like more structural demand. But given that, like, for example, the biggest competitors are north of $1 billion ARR and they got there very, very fast, Cloud Code is like reported over $500 million ARR. We only need about like 25 million a year to fully offset miner emission at current prices. And so I think it makes sense at these margins to basically do two things. Number one is price much cheaper than competitors, which we're already doing at like $12 a month. And number two is drive a lot of that revenue back to basically keep the emissions as high to keep the, I guess, progress going on the platform. And so we probably will do a buyback with a lot of that margin.
And what's the price point for Claude Code and Cursor?
They have two plans, $20 a month, both for Cursor and Claude Code for the base plan. Claude Code has like a more expensive plan, which is $200 a month, and Cursor has a more expensive plan for enterprise, which is $40 a month. And they also have like $60, $100 a month plans. Like they have like a bunch of tiers.
Okay.
How much money does Claude make on a $200 a month subscription?
They lose a lot, is the rumor.
I know the answer to that. They lose $800 a month, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. That's the.
It costs them $1,000 to fulfill a $200 subscription.
And it'll cost us $5 to do 12. Yeah.
I prefer your numbers.
Yeah, me too. And I think that like the interesting thing is that we might also do one more pricing tier where if you want to use with more expensive models, you can for sure sub it out and like kind of like use our agent with the more expensive models as long as you're paying for the cost to use those models. But at these prices, we can basically have all that under the hood where you don't have to worry about the inference costs. We're not going to limit your usage just because you're using the product a lot. Even if you use it like 4,000 requests per month to our agent, we can still handle that and still not take a loss on that whatsoever. And the average user is kind of like estimated to be around 2,000 requests a month for Claude Code, which is skewed very heavily by like power users who Claude is actually kicking off their platform. The most, I guess, like the most prolific 5% of users because they just can't afford to service it.
Which is nuts, really. Like if you've got customers that want to take a lot of value from you, you work out a way of delivering it. You don't just kick them off your platform.
Exactly.
So can we just go back a bit, going back to your incentive mechanism and how miners are the product and product is are the miners. At some point, whether it's in 1 year or 10 years, there will be a plateau of, diminishing returns and whatnot.
Yeah.
How far away is that plateau, do you think?
I think it's a couple years away. The reason why I say that is because the benchmarks are not indicative of how much an engineer can do. And we're getting to basically to the point where we're plateauing the benchmarks. And so we're kind of like at this weird point where the benchmarks are saturated, but there's still like a long way to go. And it's actually going to be harder to cross that chasm for anyone, I think, that isn't us. Because basically, like with the benchmarks, you have a way to kind of measure, okay, we're getting better and better and better. But the benchmarks don't cover the full extent of what it means to be a software engineer. And so you now need a way to basically use the product to feed that back. And I think we can do that the fastest by basically feeding it directly into the incentive mechanism. But I think we're a couple years away from kind of like saturating that, where like the agents are good enough now where it's indistinguishable which one to use, kind of thing.
Okay. And one of the questions, we have screenshotted a bunch of questions, but one that keeps coming up is what's stopping Claude or Cursor or anyone just taking your best model and then or agent and then just putting it in their own black box?
So I think there's two things. One is that like the key here right now is just rate of iteration. And like it's whoever can improve the fastest is the best. If I, for example, were to stop bridges right now, or like for example, only deliver the product, the agent right now, and I didn't automatically change out the agent that we're using in the product to next week, there's going to be a noticeable difference in quality because the agent is that much better. The second thing is that Anthropic and OpenAI are actually paying their engineers to make the product better. At a certain point, I think with enough market penetration, even at current prices, if you are the engineer at Anthropic that's really driving the needle forward and making the agents better, you're going to get paid more to do it on ridges versus at your 9 to 5. So it's like you kind of like almost like drain the talent in that sense.
Okay, that's good. And the other question, which again I see a lot, is what I know you're moving away from benchmarks because it's not a real representation of if it's good or not. But I think there is a lot of people asking for a clear chart of the full 500 SWEBench questions with all of the the performances of all the competitors. Then because we don't know where ridges is, like the percentages we see on your app at the moment. I mean, it means nothing now because yes, you're the best.
The mixed Russians.
Like
will we get that picture? But it's hard now. You're going for Polyglot and SWE.
Yeah. So I can say that like at the time of basically when we switched, we were basically at the top. Just absolutely. I think we got like, I think 77% was our highest score. I'll have to double check that number. Now that we've kind of like split it up, where we have polyglot questions and SWEBench questions, the agents have gone from just kind of only trying to be better at SWEBench to trying to be generally better agents. So we haven't run it more recently, but I can run like a more recent number. I expect that the total number has gone down, despite the fact that the agents have gotten better.
Okay. Well, and that's because it's less of a curve fit, so to speak.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's less overfit.
What is the accurate thing to describe bridges at the moment? Because there's a lot of confusion. Everyone's saying, "Oh, that's not quite correct," or "That's not quite correct." I need to find. Actually, I had a friend. I got a screenshot somewhere on the screen. He was talking to a software engineer who's been doing it for 20 years. Blah blah blah. Said that he's watched your novelty search and all that sort of stuff, and it was basically just poo-pooing it completely. So at the moment, you're the best. You're state of the art open source software engineering assistant.
Yeah.
And so right now, where are you better than Claude Code and Cursor, or is it not apples to oranges comparison, is it?
I think it'll be apples to apples when the product comes out, because it's hard to tell. Like you need to actually see how the users react to it and kind of like determine that from there. On the benchmarks, yeah, like we're obviously like on those charts. But whether that translates into a real product is, I think, the big question, whether like we can actually translate this to revenue. And that's where our kind of design is focused right now, like tie the incentive to kind of skew more and more towards real world performance. And so using the product signal instead of the benchmarks, or kind of like to determine who's the top agent, is how we kind of tie that back.
Revenue chooses the king. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's still winner takes all for the top miner.
Yes. Yep. It's going to be winner takes all.
Sweet. And for the indefinite future, or foreseeable.
Yes. Yeah. For the foreseeable future, we'll keep it like that. It makes it easier to kind of design an incentive when it's easy to see why the top guy's winning.
Sorry, Mark, just one more question. The other thing that, because I've got some friends that are furiously trying to get their agent on, and they can't be validated. So have you increased the validation iteration?
Yeah, that is more of a stability question. So basically what happened was that we added like a lot of features very fast. The code base got very complex. We're almost done. This Friday, a full rewrite comes out of the platform. It's going to be a lot smoother.
So how long will it take to eval a new agent?
We want to basically do something where we do parallel evals. So ideally, like it should be within 2 hours. It's probably going to still be like roughly 4 or 5 hours. And then I think that we'll slowly chip away at that and get it slower, or get it faster.
So top miner could literally last an hour or two eventually.
Yes. And I think that the emissions are high enough now where it's still profitable as a miner to be on top for a few hours instead of just a whole day.
Yeah. And of course, when D-Town bull market starts, those emissions will,
Skyrocket. Yeah. Okay.
How much is the top miner making at the moment on a daily basis?
It's a good question. I think the alpha is roughly like 20 or 25 bucks. Let's just call it like 22. So times it's 25 of 92 tokens a day times, let's say, 24 bucks a day, $60,000 a day. Actually, 62,000. Just saying.
$62,000 a day.
Yeah. It's insane. It's insane rewards. And so if you make, let's say you're on top for like 3 hours, I mean, like let's call it like, yeah, so it's like eight grand. No, way more. Sorry, 62,000 divided by 8 hours is still like, yeah, 7,700. Wait, what? No, that's completely wrong. Over 3. Sorry, that's still 20 grand to be on top for 8 hours a day. 21 grand.
It's nice. It's good. It's good. Right, I'll bring up some questions. But while I'm bringing the questions up, though, quick shout out to anyone that's listening to this on Spotify and they're trying to listen to this on 1.5 times. Good luck with the Shaq bits.
Yeah.
Shaq, you talk.
For that.
You think so fast. Walk so fast. It's like I'm listening to you on 2 times speed, and Siam's normal speed.
I'll try to talk about Star. It was consistent, I guess.
Walking so fast means that we can do a 3-hour podcast in an hour. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Right. First question that I took in here: when will they be working product? We answered that. Will it be released for testing by the community beforehand?
Maybe. So I do have people in the community that I want to test it out for sure. once we have that kind of like dual agent architecture ready, it's going to make it very easy to run it on your computer. So probably, yes, we will release it to a lot of community members beforehand, just to test it out, give us feedback before we do like a full release.
Okay. Will there be a free version of it?
So we're considering doing something as well where we have like alpha. If you hold enough alpha, you will get like severely discounted access to the product. So in that sense, we might do a free version for people that are like, I guess, like in the community already. I expect that like this is not going to be the case for the majority of our users because it's very hard to buy alpha right now, especially. But yeah, we're open to doing a free version, especially for the community.
Marketing, is there a push happening before the release? Is any marketing firm contacted?
No, not at all. I think we're going to do a release and focus on like building that flow very, very well, where like it's very like tightly integrated the product signal to the emissions. And kind of get that flow going before we get too vague. Because what we don't want is a situation where we get a lot of users very fast. All of a sudden, we're like, wait, like, the incentive mechanism is broken and like it's hard to like tie the signal to real world agents. And now all the miners are optimizing towards shittier agents, so to speak, that are getting deployed into prod. So we kind of want that like almost like an organic growth in that sense.
So
Which
then
I think, yeah.
go on.
Which I think will be quite fast. If you look at competitors like Cloud Code, if you look at competitors like Cursor, like their ARR charts are like hockey sticks. So once you kind of get the product good enough, the organic growth is quite quick, especially because everyone kind of talks about what they're switching to on Twitter a lot, that kind of stuff. I think it's reasonable to expect that if all goes well, we should be able to offset the miner emissions by end of January, is my goal internally.
Nice.
Yeah.
That would be great. And this is a good question. I think you've kind of part answered it, but I'm interested in how you think about it. What's the budget for marketing? And how do you think about the budget for marketing?
I think that you only need the marketing on the enterprise side. And for that, it's going to be more because the enterprise pricing, even on our competitors, is way more expensive than obviously the indie pricing. They're willing to pay a lot more if it turbocharges an engineering performance. And to that end, in terms of selling to like regular users, I think that organic is the best way to go because everyone's talking about it. And our main marketing budget has to be reserved towards selling to enterprises, where there's a whole flow of like, like reaching out to them, kind of developing a relationship. And so to that end, I think that like most of our spend that's not used towards like our regular kind of like sustaining operations, which is quite low, will be more to like sustain like I guess the price and the mission to keep the I guess like the growth of the product going. And then for sales, it's a little bit easier to do like for example heavy commissions, especially because our margins are so high. Where a sales representative that can get us those enterprise contracts will get like let's say 10-15% of the entire contract value. And so there's a strong incentive for them just to be based on performance. If you bring revenue in, you will get a big slice of that as your kind of payout.
Got it. And then, and I'm with you on that actually on the enterprise side. Will Shaq attend any podcasts with decent reach? I mean, that's brutal.
No plans as of yet. I think that right now, until we get this kind of like flow working very well, that it's very clear that making the product better is getting you more emission. We want this to be organic. At that point, once we have that, I guess like once we hit that inflection point, especially because like for sure we will get exploited at the start. We'll have like a lot of issues to fix. The details will have to be worked out and firmed up. At that point, then we will go on like a much bigger marketing push to kind of get adoption.
What would the most impactful podcast be for you to go on, do you think?
I don't know that developers watch a lot of podcasts. I mean, I'd say the biggest one would probably be something like the Dwarkesh podcast, where there like the angle is like you kind of really highlight how it's like almost like a new model of company. And developers are a lot more pro the ethos of like open source. They like the idea of like it's just a very cool idea. You have like a bunch of startups and everyone's just getting paid directly for making the product better. So it'd be more of that than a product highlight. But I think that will get a lot of attention onto the product. But I'm not sure that like they listen too much to podcasts to determine what to use in their daily developer flow.
Okay, I have balls this up, haven't I? What have I done? Get rid of that. That one's there. Listen, this is my first time sharing this stuff on the screen. We haven't done an AMA before. Like Shaq said on slide 1, it was a special edition. Right, another load of questions here. Ridges is already out in Claude on SWE. What's next? Well, we know what's going to happen. It is that shift to real world problems. Emissions will soon flow into the product. What will actually drive incentives? I think you've covered that one off as well. Can you outline first revenue stream? How fast will revenue cover emissions? Revenue stream coming end of October. covering emissions January product pricing, enterprise or smaller shops?
So initially Indie does, yeah, but eventually we want to go for enterprises because that's where the real kind of big money is, I think. And so if anything, like the smaller users are subsidizing it and like they're given like a very cheap plan to get us that data that we need to get to the enterprise level faster.
Alpha to equity depends on jurisdiction. How can you stay compliant? Where are we at on that front?
I can't answer too much about that for legal reasons, but
Okay.
it's in progress.
Then we'll move on. Most innovation happens in small labs instead of big LLM. How will Ridges position itself as a wrapper for AI models?
So the cool thing is that the agent actually gets to determine what models they want to use. And if you look at the top agent right now, it actually splits between 3 models. It splits between, well, the main ones that it uses are a model called GLM FP8 4.5, which nobody's heard of, but I figured out that's the better choice, and DeepSeek V3. And so whenever a lab kind of comes out with a new model, the miners requested, we just add it as like the available models for them, and they just select it if it's better.
So Grok 3 is now open source. Does it use any of that at all?
I don't believe they're hosted on Shoots, but no one's requested that of us, so we haven't added it yet.
Cool.
Mexi. I have seen some Ridges Mexi chat. What's happened there?
No listing plan right now. I don't know why. Kind of that took off over the weekend. But yeah, as of current, like, there are no plans to list.
Yeah, it's just odd, isn't it? Normally, there's everything, and all of these Telegram groups is just based purely on facts, and they're all backed up by evidence. But yeah,
Yeah, no, I think it just came out of nowhere. Maybe like telephone tags, and like, oh, they should list on Mexi. Someone's like, oh yeah, they should. Maybe they will. Someone's like, yeah, they will. And then it's like,
that is what happens.
that's why they're doing revenue search.
That's true story. Revenue Search Special Edition. What key metrics should investors in Ridges be looking out for?
I mean, revenue. That's the only one that matters. That's the real benchmark here. Are people willing to pay for the product?
Well, that's not true, is it? Because there's a reason why you're launching at $12, $8, $11, and that's not revenue.
That's true. Yeah, it also gives us like another benchmark. But until that benchmark's out, I think, yeah, that's a good point. I guess we will publicize the benchmarks. That'll be like the kind of one to optimize for because we'll be using like the real world user queries.
Yeah.
So they turn like,
I mean, the answer to this question, based on what you said earlier, is that
Mhm.
in the long term, yeah, revenue is the one, and the long term isn't very far away. But in the short term, it's the number of users that you've got that have downloaded the app, because that's how you are going to keep the pace of innovation so
Yes.
high. So
That's true.
and so that's the key metric in the short term: is have we chosen the right price point to, one, cover the costs of those users, but two, attract as many users as we can so we can iterate faster.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Which I guess is like kind of revenue, but there's like a more precise term for it, which is users. Yes, correct.
Yeah. So stage one, users, then revenue. But
Yeah.
if revenue is the most important metric in the short term, you wouldn't be pricing at $12.
I guess revenue in the sense that like given a certain price point, how many people are willing to pay for it, and that's like the tipping point for how useful is this in the real world.
I think you're being a bit pedantic there, Mark. Like with the user stuff, that's more product development, which is an ongoing thing that's always happening in parallel. But revenue surely is king there. They go in parallel.
They do go in parallel, but this first launch isn't priced to maximize revenue.
True.
So if you're not launching something to maximize revenue, saying that the key metric is the revenue is just not true.
Potato.
No, I agree.
Revenue going up is the question.
Yeah.
Well, but listen, everybody wants to hear that the subnet owner's on board with the revenue train. So what's Ridges going to look like in 6 months? What's going to separate Ridges from all other subnets?
I think we'll know in 6 months whether our incentive can work or not. Like definitively, I think, and our bet, obviously, as a company, is that we can kind of tie this incentive mechanism and kind of do what we did to benchmarks at scale on the product, where you take less capital and you make it way more efficient by paying people out to actually improve it. And this is a question of incentive mechanism design, and use that to get to the point where we are basically, people think right now of the dominant tools as Cursor and Cloud Code, and now they're going to think of it as Ridges and Cloud Code and Cursor. We'll know in 6 months whether that happens. Like, I think if everyone on your timeline isn't actually talking about Ridges the product because they like using it and because it's built cool things for them, we have failed.
Yeah. Oh, and where does Replit sit amongst all of this?
Nobody serious uses them. I mean, it's like it's most serious developers kind of like download have their development environment set up on their computer, and so they kind of like download standalone apps and development environments to help them, I guess, like code. You don't do it through a website for the most part.
Amazing.
I mean, so I've seamlessly changed the slide in the background, which has surprised me. And I think we've covered most of the questions, but there is a good question here, which is: do Ridge's competitors actually know that they've been surpassed? And if they do, how have they reacted?
No, I don't think so. I don't have any indication of that. Obviously, there's funds that are looking at it and stuff like that, but I think that they will when the product comes out. That's where it kind of goes from like, oh, these guys are just like some crypto joke to like a serious company. And in some sense, I think that's a good thing. You kind of want to stay under the radar and not have them adopt like this public competition model until it's too late. Because it takes time, especially at a bigger company, to engineer the idea, for example, taking the product and making the incentive. So it's good to kind of stay under the radar. And at some point, when you flip them, I think you want it to be fast and aggressive, where you kind of like brain drain their engineers because it's worth it to like build an agent on Ridges instead of at the company.
Amazing. Right. Khalid on Twitter has asked a bunch of questions. To start at number one, when doing working product? Yep, done that. Number two, discuss the various targets, markets that can be attracted. Where did he decide to focus?
Yeah, so starting with indie devs, because I think that's the fastest way to get the data to make the product very good, and then eventually enterprise. Because enterprise obviously is a much slower sales cycle. It's much harder to get them to try new experimental things. Eventually, I think the biggest one is enterprise, because we kind of like fit that market a lot better because we're primarily running on open source models with open source code. So for mid-sized companies that want to, for example, keep everything on premises and have compliance issues, we can serve all those users. But first, we need to basically get the product good enough to do that.
So three. Now I'm still a little bit confused. What does what does Shaq and team plan to do with revenue? So you said by January, hopefully you're matching missions, but you're not doing
Yeah.
buyback. So
No, I think we will. Especially because the number isn't massive relative to the revenue that I think we can get. Supporting the price allows us to basically keep the missions high enough to incentivize those engineers to keep building it better. Especially if we make it like the top minor changes very fast. And if we get like better, I guess, like engineers or more engineers coming in from like, I guess, heavy hitter companies and starting to build entire companies around this. For people to like build like full companies in North America that are built only around Ridges, you need to have a sustained cash flow for them to kind of like live off of. And so it makes sense, I guess, to pile that back in.
nice. Four, you can't say because there's illegal type stuff. But one of the other questions is, will revenue be used as dividends for equity holders?
Yes. So I guess like in this model, the idea is that like right now, even at $12, if we have margin, what happens when we're selling to enterprise at, let's say, like $200, $500? That money can be used as profit, and not all of it needs to go directly back into the token. But you can basically allow the tokens to purchase shares, and then that is basically paid out directly as dividends.
Nice.
I think there's actually like an interesting broader question here of like how do you take fair launch tokens and tie them to like, I guess, real world revenue, which I think has to be solved. And a lot of people are thinking about it, which is good.
Cool. I think you've already answered this one about miners with the eval. You're doing me, and it's not related to Targon or Shoes, is it?
No, no, that's on us. We're doing the rerun on Friday. That's coming on Friday.
Cool. That was a quick. Trying to find the next question. Here we go. Oh wow, Barbie. Any additional insight as to we covered that? Yep, covered that. Plan to market a new product once launched. How? Just getting the devs. We covered that. This, by the way, it's good that we've already covered a lot of these questions. But,
Yeah.
thoughts. Oh yeah. What are your thoughts on the Bittensor halving and how this might affect the subnet?
The halving is interesting. I think that I don't know enough about detail. I guess like um detailonomics, if you will, to like be definitive about this. There's better people to answer this question than me. I think that it could be good for subnets because a lot of the subnets right now have charts that are going down, and it's very hard to kind of like find buy pressure to match that because the emissions are coming into the pool so fast. And so I think and I hope what could happen is that like right now, for example, if you want to take a lot of these charts that have had high emissions for months and they have very thick liquidity pools, every day you need to have more and more, I guess, like buy pressure come in to offset like how hard it is to just move the price upward, which means that it's only easier to sell than to buy because there's new supply being emitted. The default is to sell that. and all of a sudden the price goes down, and anyone that's kind of trying to push it back up is just fighting against like a massive uphill battle. And this slows us down. I think it gives a fighting chance to a lot of subnets to basically, like now the buy pressure had a lot, like double the impact on like reversing the trend. Of course, it also has double the impact the other way, but because like I guess the Sentinel summon is close to 1 and the chain kind of like reverts to like supporting the price at 1, I think that like the selling kind of at this point is at like a bottom. There's only so much you can sell for each of these pools because the chain eventually steps in as a buyer of last resort. And from here, if we want to go up, you've now made it twice as easy, because like the liquidity building up is twice as slow.
Duckety Duck. Question: You've postponed / scrapped some planned releases and upgrades lately. Has this changed how you look at communicating future developments?
I mean, a little bit, yeah. To be honest, like right now, our biggest problem is just the stability, which rewrite will help a lot with. And we are kind of like a little bit chaotic as a company, as in like we're doing things as fast as we can. But yeah, we should be probably tweeting more and communicating even more than we do right now, just as of what's coming and why.
Cool. And how will you communicate in future? Like, is X the best way? Are you going to continue doing Friday AMAs?
It's a good question. I'm curious to hear what you guys think, actually, like what I guess people want to see from us. We mostly just tweet and we message a lot on Discord, but our Discord is kind of like flooded, so it's hard to find information there.
I think personally, an AMA, once every 2 weeks or once a week is good live.
Yeah, I think we're open to that. Like maybe like a weekly AMA, just like keep everyone posted on what's going on. Not averse to it.
I mean, it's not a bad thing by keeping people up to date. What are your thoughts, Mark?
Well, I mean, I really like this platform, and that
Stop stealing
No, 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 no. I'm not talking about revenue search. All I'm saying is that, like, instead of doing an AMA on X, why don't you jump on something live? So right now, we said we were going to do this, or you said you were going to do this, and we've taken questions in, and then I don't know if you've got the chat open on your screen, Shaq, but I can see a whole stream of questions
Yeah.
coming in, and then at the same time as all of that, like, there's still chat happening in all of the Telegram groups about what's happening. Like, so this
No watches.
no watches.
I'm watchless.
So this is a really effective way, and I actually think that there's inefficiency in any AMA other than collecting the answers, or rather collecting the questions and then doing slides if you remember to put all of the slides in.
I like when you guys asked in advance all the questions, because like even on RMAs on the spot, people don't have questions, but if you kind of give them time to think about it and then answer them in one shot, I think it's a better format.
Yeah.
Shit. No.
You can ask his answer straight away, gives you a shit answer, or it hallucinates. Give it a chain of
Full
thought.
time, yeah. It'll fix it.
So,
It's actually a great question. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Contrarian says something I'm not managed to wrap my head around fully is the difficulty of stopping other companies from using open source agent code themselves. Although the open source method is great for pushing the boundaries, I think it could be difficult to defend. Thoughts? We have covered this, but I think let's hit this answer.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a medium-term problem. Right now, for the next year and a half, I think until agents are good enough, the rate of iteration can be fast enough such that it doesn't matter if you copy us. If you're a regular company with the traditional model of hiring engineers and paying them to try to do things, even if you're reading all the improvements that Bridges agents make, it's a 24/7 machine churning out better agents. You're not going to be able to keep up. However, at some point, obviously the agents will plateau, and then we might look at, for example, closed sourcing it or like doing like a lot more like legal action to kind of protect the IP. So it is like a long-term problem, but I think right now less relevant than just improving the speed of iteration faster than everybody else, which is kind of what we've done. There's a question in the chat as well from Ventura. It's a good question. If you're dependent on product revenue to surpass minor emissions to disincentivize miners getting the system, what happens if revenue doesn't surpass emissions? So I think that like there's going to be 2 stages to this. The first one is going to be that we are going to have to play like this game of cat and mouse, very much so, where we do things to make it, for example, hard to figure out which agent is running in the background. And so I guess like a miner wouldn't know which agent to try to bump the performance for and like give more signal to. But I think that 2 million a month compared to like, for example, Cursor at over $1 billion, we're rumored at over $1.5 billion a year now, ARR pretty fast. Cloud Code definitely over, like rumored over like $500 million. I think that 2 million a month is not an unreasonable number to surpass relatively quickly. in revenue, and at that point, it becomes a lot easier. Until then, it's a question of basically playing cat and mouse the same way that we do with our agents on the benchmarks, where we have to kind of read the code and make like a manual judgment that we try to be as transparent about as possible as to whether this agent actually made improvement.
Cool. And standby over. I'm just changing the format of one of these things because it came across as a massive getting him at Gigi. Here we go. I've labeled Shaq 6. Here's Shaq 6. Oh, I tried to black out the name. Oh, God damn. Anyway, I'm sorry, Richard. I'm just retarded and incompetent. That's my bad. Anyway, let's go through the question. He said, I met someone who's a CTO with 18 years in software engineering. In fact, I'll let everyone read that. You can read that fast and I can shout it out.
Sure. Yeah. The guy just didn't watch Novelty Search. He watched Novelty Search. You notice that like we kind of built the model around open source largely because of the product. We cannot serve a product where the users have to send their code to miners, and the miners have us by the balls if they're the only ones with the agents, because they can leave and now the product gets worse. So now you basically submit the best you've got. If for some reason you want to stop competing, great, everyone will just keep building off of you. But because you submit the miner code to us, we can serve it for the user actually on their machines. So it's actually the opposite, where that's like our biggest advantage, that everything's kind of open source.
Nice. Yeah, we've covered everything else, I think.
Yeah, and I just love the clothes. By the way, I like Ridges. I invested in it. I've only heard positive things about it.
We're just on the basic knowledge for
Right.
but-
Let's look at the so yeah, those that have asked questions in the X's, they've popped up. So Mark, yeah, feel free to pop on any that you like. I'm starting from the top.
You're starting from the top.
Yeah, this is gonna be so big. That's what she said. Sorry. I'm so immature. Right, here we go. I'm trying to find a question.
Well, let's go with this one.
How much of Ridges subject code is written with Ridges? Great question. None of it right now. In fact, we actually ban vibe coding right now, but we will integrate it pretty soon. Where like as soon as we get to the point where I think that like we think that it's good enough to use in the product, if we are ever using a coding product in the company, it'll only be ours. Just to kind of like dog food it. But actually, so this caused a lot of bugs where we were like using vibe coded like agents, and it caused some problems in their current form. There's a long way to go, I think. So we just stopped using them.
Cool. Hugo, have you considered users rating answers?
Yeah, so that's exactly the incentive. We don't want to make it explicit of like pick between two. OpenAI does this. I don't know if you noticed. Sometimes in ChatGPT, it'll give you two answers and you pick which one you like better. But then it becomes too easy to like kind of try to figure out which one is which. And so we want to use the user signal. For example, like if the user has the option to accept an agent suggestion, how often do they do so, as what determines whether an agent is better.
Okay. I thought this was funny. Hey Templar, I love your job. Wrong AMA, mate. Chris has also asked a good one with any issues of scale. Like can Targon and Shoot cover, let's say you got like, 1 billion users all of a sudden, not that you would, but could they cover the inference on that and compute?
I think so. I mean, the way they're designed is that they kind of scale with the scale. There's probably going to be like some lag, and we have like some preparations there, as to like just backups if we need it. Let's say as it takes the miners on Shoots and Targon to scale up. But I think it should be fine, especially with margin this high. If we need to like pay for emergency inference, we have the capital to do so.
Cool. Bobby has asked about the cost. Yes, yeah, that you cover the cost, and yeah, it should. Go on, Mark. You're trying to show on that.
This one, it's not a question, but it's true.
I think it's true. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a very good point.
Kodak, prime example, they created the digital camera.
Yeah. They lost the iPhone, right? I will say, I do think these guys are a bit more sophisticated than Walmart. Like there still are smaller-ish companies. And there's kind of like a lot of lessons learned in tech of like keeping things like lean, keeping an eye out on things. So they probably will notice it faster. But yeah, we're definitely under the radar right now, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that is all of the questions that I can see in there.
Yeah. Have you been approached yet?
I mean by funds, but not by like, for example, Cursor or Cloud Code at the moment.
Okay, there's two new questions popped in right at the very end here, and I like both of these. What keeps you up at night?
I mean, I spent all my time basically thinking about the subnet right now, but it's mostly just technical stuff. Other than that, I sleep like a baby.
How long do you sleep like a baby for? How many hours of sleep do you need?
I got like a good 7 a night.
Do you really?
Yeah, yeah. No,
Wh-
no sweat.
Are you early bird, late night owl? What are you?
No, definitely like a night owl. I think like our schedule right now is usually 10 a.m. to midnight on most days. But we also live at the office, so there's no time spent like going to get lunch because we just Uber Eats it. There's no time spent like commuting to work because I live here. Just wake up and go downstairs.
Very efficient. And then this is an excellent question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, to be honest, I think the main thing is like just like constant feedback. Right now, we get, for example, like a lot of feedback while the platform is unstable. When the platform's humming along, suggestions on how I think people think that we can improve the competition, especially people that have like backgrounds in incentive mechanism design, is incredibly helpful. I think another big one is actually like mining on other subnets like Shoots and Targon to kind of get the inference ready, and mining on ridges, of course. Um, the biggest thing is that like I think like especially when we release the product, be as harsh as possible. In the initial stages and even as we get better, to like tell us, okay, this is where the product is shit, this is where it's unusable. Um, because I think we're only gonna win if we can incorporate the product data very well. And doing that is very like is very tricky to do. Designing an incentive on benchmarks is difficult enough. Doing it with live data is going to be even harder. And so kind of getting like a lot of like usage and like just kind of give us like very blunt feedback about the product. And like how it's bad, where it's failing, how we can make it better. Maybe like if you have friends that want to use it, you can suggest them to us. We're happy to give them discounts or even the product for free. If they're willing to give like a lot more detailed feedback, that kind of stuff. It's gonna be a very, I think, like intense time when the product comes out, where like we need to like gonna get that loop working very fast, especially with this level of emissions on the line, where the money needs to be put to good use.
Nice. One last question here. Sorry. Hugo said, any ideas how to use mechanisms when they come in for you?
I had a shower thought the other day. I don't think we're gonna do this, but like the idea was, what if Redis becomes like the incentive is like only like the product determines better agents, and then we let other people register subnets, and basically compete on different accesses of how to evaluate the agents. So instead of us designing the evaluation, like for each subset of what makes an agent better, we let people basically design their own sub evaluations and then submit it to the parent evaluation to split incentive like that. And then I guess like for each subnet, whoever has like the most growth in I guess user quality because of their agents gets the most emission proportionally. I guess like subloaded to them, if that makes sense. So almost like take the owner emission, kind of cut it up between the subnets, and you can earn that emission if you can like come up with a better eval system than us within our platform.
Nice. Well, I think we should start wrapping that up there. It's been 1 hour and 8 minutes.
Oh wow.
uh, any last questions, Mark, before the last question we ask Shaq?
No, I don't think so. I think. Well, how's the revenue search special edition AMA gone versus doing your AMA on X?
I think it's much better. Like you like kind of getting all the questions there. There were a lot of questions we were able to answer a lot more, a lot faster. I think it was much nicer. Also the back and forth. It's kind of weird being on the stage alone.
Yeah. How much engagement do you normally get on X live?
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't look at the total count. I can look at our last MA to figure out how many people were there.
It's interesting to know. It's just interesting those sort of thing for other subnets, so that they've got some figures. So because there is no best practice. There's no benchmark for being a subnet. So I just think that
Yeah.
the more transparent subnets are with, hey, we did this and this worked, and we did this and this was better, then I think helps everybody out, which is what we are here for.
Yeah. So the last one was September 18th, right before our mixed evaluation launch. That got like 1.9K tuned in, but I don't know how many were there live. And most of them showed up on the recording.
Yeah, it's mate, 2,971 live viewers right now. I just added it up.
Yeah, that for sure blows us out of the water. 100%.
And this sort of leads us to the question that Mark and I talk about a lot. So at the moment, like everything within Bittensor is inwards facing, and there's not many things outwards facing. And obviously, we're getting increasing live numbers here for revenue search, but I think we're still just, probably 99% are detail investors or just people within Bittensor. And like like we are unpaid, unofficial salespeople for Bittensor. And I think we're doing a slightly suboptimal job at the moment, because yes, we're bringing in new inflows into Bittensor every month, but I don't think we're bringing in many new eyeballs per month. So with that in mind, who do you think will be a good person to have on revenue search that would get more eyeballs?
I think the clearest example of someone that like kind of is also like in Bittensor but has like a lot of exposure to other products that have done well is probably Barry Silbert. It'd be interesting to get him on revenue search and kind of see how he's seeing it. Where I guess like he looks at the subnets, how we kind of use them, that kind of stuff.
Barry, I agree.
Yeah, well, it'd be nice if people weren't messaging our podcast saying, when's Shaq going to go on a proper podcast?
Yeah, that certainly would help.
We will, honestly.
That's going to keep me up tonight.
Yeah. I look forward to the time, and I think it'll be within a couple of months where I go from trying to explain what Ridges is to someone, and they go, "Oh, how does it compare to Cursor?" and blah blah blah. Instead, just go and use it.
Yeah, always watch this.
With 0 users in October 30th, and by end of December, it's now X number. And that user growth itself, whether the curiosity customers or not, will be proof in the pudding.
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, that's the biggest proof. And it's like every time you log on, the product gets better because of the competition behind it. That's way faster than a regular company. That's the kind of thing that we want to prove out here.
Cool. I think our work here is done. Special
Awesome.
edition over.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
No, thank you, Shaq. Much appreciated. So,
Wow.
and yeah, any other subnets, we're more than happy to do an AMA special for you if you have lots of questions prodding you. So,
Yeah, so thanks so much, guys.
Well, thanks, Shaq. Thanks, Siam.
See ya.
here it is.
Bye.
Toodaloo.